Have you ever wondered about feminine and masculine energy? I get a chance to sit down with Nan Akasha in the Yucatan, and she is a sacred feminine mystery teacher. And it's very interesting about what she does and how she does it. And she's about to teach us some new things about feminine energy. Here we go. Did we talk about the four corners of the world last time?
I think we did. We touched on that, yeah.
Are you familiar with the archetypes?
Yeah, depending on the culture. I've studied a lot of different mystery schools. So depending on the culture, the archetype or the guardian or the meaning or the color is different depending on the direction, yeah.
Well, what I've discovered is originally there were four archetypes in each of the four quadrants. And obviously the four corners of the world are the oldest parts of creation. In Chimney Rock, I found out, because didn't you tell me that I have a soldier and two Black Panthers with me?
Yes. Yeah, you do have the Panthers.
Now, this is what's crazy. Now, when I looked at Chimney Rock before, I had an aerial view, and you could see a big soldier on the left side,
Gosh.
right, of stone formation.
Yeah.
And then I used to think the thing across from the granite monolith was looking. So when I went up to Chimney Rock this last time, and I went to the top, when you come down the end of the valley and you get to the granite monolith, these things are basically side by side looking east. And the one on the left, the feminine energy side, is a black cat, and Chimney Rock represents a black wolf. And there's something about the synchronicity of the black wolf and the black cat.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you said there's a soldier here and that two Black Panthers. So ironically, the archetype Sphinx looking thing is a black cat, panther, whatever it is. Now, my wife, we're separated right now, potentially going through a divorce. I don't know what's going to happen, but she's always had this fascination of black cats. So I'm just wondering if the powers that be wants us apart or what the hell's going on, because I just remember when you told me that. It's just very ironic that the lay of the land is similar to what you said. What would you say about that?
I think that you're talking about portals, and since everything is frequency, right? Everything is vibration, then we resonate with certain places, we resonate with certain animal guides at different times in life. That changes. They can be in the moment, they could be a guide about the marriage, the experience, the transition. These seem more, especially the black cat, more like a lifelong type of archetypal guide for you. And the idea that the wolf and the black cat are holding that masculine, feminine energies. And so it's very much like a gate or an arch, right? That you are, because you're a doorway for certain kinds of information, right? To come in here. And like all of us, as we go through our different life experiences and we break down who we thought we were and what we thought we wanted and start to tune in to what's happening, what we can communicate with, what we're interested in learning and embodying it, you start to realize you're encoded. And it's even more than just the idea that maybe you have a program, like a computer program or habit, but you have this other level of encodement where my ex-husband was, when our daughter died, he went into hospice. And one of the guides that we would go to told him, you just have to be in the room. You're a doorway. Right. So his presence would open something for people to feel ready to go or to feel at peace with it or to bring that in. So that's definitely there. As far as most of what I'm being shown about you and your wife in terms of, there's a lot of, you could call it past lives or karmic agreements, but it looks like two trees that are like that, like the branches grew up and are very entangled, and that there's wisdom in there. So as the trees lose their leaves, they do it as a protective measure for themselves. They let go of that extremity to go through the winter. They know there. And right now there's that clarity coming in, like, who am I and who are they and what's the path? So there's more like clarity, some clumps we've just been through the eclipses. So a lot of what happened for each of us in the eclipses isn't fully clear yet. We're really in an integration period now. And so that gives you the opportunity to sort of see yourself. If you were two trees and all these leaves you can't see, But now it's like you're starting to be able to see through like an X-ray to where's me, where's she, where's who I thought I was with her or in that. What did I have expectations about that? What did I expect that to do for me? All those things are really up for introspection. And Panther, Jaguar, all cat energies, but especially the cats like Jaguar and Panther, they give you that vision. They give you their ability to see in the dark, past shadows, past your own fears, through any aspect of that idea of darkness. So that's a power to remember. It's also one of the premium powers in the Maya culture was when you had a carving of a high priestess holding a jaguar head, they called it a helmet, and giving it to someone. It's not what was interpreted by the conquerors, like, oh, it's a king. It was the high priestess saying, you've done the work to become the level of consciousness to be able to have this power now. And so that's coming to you, but there's a sense of redefining who you are so that you actually use this on the things that you research, the things that interest you, but there's like a whole other level of communication there for you.
On the other side, that I can communicate more than I am currently?
Yeah, definitely, because we have 360 senses. I guess we probably have more, but that's what I learned in my mystery schools. And when we have the awakening, we don't know which ones, that we don't have names for everyone. And like, oh, I activated this. It's not a logical process because it's different for everyone. It's just expanding into the realization that we have so many already embodied, like a seed. It's a plan. It's there. It will open up if we let it. We start when the timing is right. And a lot of, like, I was having a conversation, a lot of the stress and tension and confusion, depression, whatever in the world right now is simply not having most people have not been doing the work to raise their frequency or to prepare their body, mind to receive these higher frequencies that are opening up for us now. And you could say, oh, the solar flares are terrible for you. They're going to harm your health. Well, that depends on who you are. That depends on the frequency you're at. They're actually gifts. They're like saying, here, raise your frequency. Here's a higher strength of light. Here's a higher power that you can tune into. But it is a time for us to find that balance, to get out of codependent relationships. That's people, but it's also identities, like I'm wounded. I can't do this. I didn't have that. Letting go of all of those things because we need to be stepping into our true spiritual path, which requires us to see ourselves.
So me and my wife, you think we've known each other through multiple lifetimes?
Most definitely. It's pretty rare to find people who are married even for a short period of time that don't have some of that, because that's what this point is, this portal we're in right now is about. But like I said, what I see is, without going a lot deeper, but I see these trees and then there's like another set of trees, and then another, and they kind of go into the mist or into the forest. So there's like 6 maybe. It isn't as important as that recognition that each one of these has gifts. Each one of these has something that's ready to be completed. And you don't need to know what it is. And you might, consciously. But that's part of the process now, is you embodying an identity that's completely separate from everything else, from your family, from your culture, from your marriage, from everything, and becoming a higher level, clearer channel so that because you bring in a lot of interesting information, and it's sort of like seeing a video, reading something, having somebody show you, and then there's, what's another level of understanding, like an Einstein who was a logic and creative makeup in his soul. So he could expand out into these abstract places, psychometry, and then bring back these ideas. But then he was able to put them into a logical format. And that's not common. That's something that you have. And so as you realize and receive more information in different ways, it's actually a really fun time, even though it's confusing to a lot of people, because we get to finally play with these things. The energies that are available to us are much, much higher, much faster, and much more abundant.
I had this article come out, and I basically wrote down creation of 4, from the God's 4 powers to the 4 parts of there's 4 systems, in debunking the ether. Ether is a binder of the universe universe, and there's 3 parts to ether, and the planetary system and the binder to that, which sun, the moon, and Pluto, and then the grid system, which I want to ask you about. The grid system, which has a binder, and I think the binders are Bermuda, the highest point in Bermuda, Chimney Rock, and then the Okefenokee Swamp. And I grounded all 3 places, and I had this vision that Earth lit up like Vegas, right? And this triangle shot straight up somewhere in the universe. I could see it straight up and it's still there, and all this light's coming up, and something aligned when I grounded this Okefenokee Swamp during the equinox, which is a very sacred place. So what do you see about that? I've never seen anybody talk about the Okefenokee Swamp, but there's some interesting things underneath that area.
Yeah, there's so much sacred land, sacred stones, sacred mounds, all of this stuff, especially in the US, because it was pretty much just ignored. And now there's like America's Stonehenge, right? And there's the mounds, and there's the serpent mounds, and there's these. I used to live in New Mexico, so those places were a little more obvious, Chaco Canyon and places like that too. But yeah, as soon as you said that, I did this, and this, as what I saw it was like those lights that for a car sale, beams that went up, the 3 of them that went up. And then right after that, I saw an overlay of some of the pictures I have of that kind of beam of light coming out the top of pyramids. So recently here, I think it was in the spring, at Chichen Itza, I was there doing a 33-day sacred experience with the serpent coming down, the solar phenomenon that's on the on the equinox, but it's actually 33 days, and that's what most people don't know. And so I work with a Mayan priest and elder, and I was there one day. I was going day and afternoon, morning and afternoon, several days in a row, and then I would go back. And so I have pictures at different points, and there was one day, they don't let you climb it, and they had guys on there with red shirts sweeping. So there were these little janitors all over the pyramid. And I was commenting like, well, who wants a picture of that? If you were a tourist and you were only here once, wouldn't that suck that you had to take a picture of a pyramid with little janitors all over it? But I started watching them because I thought, well, they're actually on that energy, in that energy. And the energy right now is very powerful. These are over water caves or cenotes. They're aligned just like Egypt and Mars pyramids. All of these have these different alignments. There's a lot of other things going on. And so I just took a few pictures, and when I looked at them later, there's this huge beam of light coming right out the top of it. And it's not there are many people who have those, and that's true for all pyramids. So all pyramids are connected around the planet like that. And places are too like that. I had a client who was doing similar to what you're doing in Michigan, and I was like, what are you doing in Michigan? Like, I was born in Chicago. I would visit my family in Minnesota a lot. We'd go to Lake Michigan. I was like, what's going on in Michigan? And there were caves and lakes and I don't know, different kind of sacred places. When she would go there like you did, like to do something that you're called to do to activate that energy, it's extremely powerful, and everything is coming online. Now there's so many different grids. It used to be, we understand there's one grid of light around the planet. Now there's many, because it's a Merkaba, it's a hologram. And then you have to have counter-rotating fields of light in order to have that Merkaba type action to move. And then you have to have on the earth, you have the Hartman grid, and I forget what the other one's called, Carter grid, that are earth energy grids, that come up. And one's very beneficial, one's not. You could put your bed or put a hospital or put a school over certain earth energies, and it makes it very difficult for people to heal or think or learn. So there's that's what is kind of like the awakening to our multidimensionality. When you start talking about a grid, like what grid are you calling on, or do you want to communicate with, or are you interested in an update on, or are you a part of working with?
Well, I think that triangle is, like I said, the binder of the whole system, and that's where the concentration is of the crystals. And I think the point in the center is Bermuda. And the reason they put Atlantis in that area, because it was the center of the cross. This is the other stuff that came online for me when I figured out the 4 archetypes each having the 4 archetypes, and there was a cat representation in each of the 4 as well for the feminine energy. And I think in Greenland, it's like Greenland or Antarctica, maybe it's Greenland, like a Manjiang cat, like a cold weather cat. If you look at pre-flood, some guy told me that the Atlas Mountains, which is the other corner, one of the other 4 corners of the world, is attached to the same mountain range as Lake Lure, the Appalachian mountain range. It's the same mountain range that goes,
it just goes down.
Yeah, right. So now here's the other kicker.
That's
pre-flood. Think pre-flood, and you look at Greenland all the way to Antarctica, you had another mountain range that came all the way straight down. So guess what?
There's a cross.
There's a cross in the Atlantic Ocean, which shows us the 4 quadrants of Earth, right? And why is nobody talking about that? Somebody told me, how are they going to talk about it? Because they told me that the information is within me, and I've been there. And if it's not within them, they're not going to be able to talk about it.
Well, but when you talk about it, that's a trigger, that's a seed, right? You know, I can remember when I finally paid attention to the spiritual calling and the deconstructions in my life that were saying, nothing you're doing is what you're supposed to do. Let's go look for something else. You know, when I finally got on that in a more conscious way, I started seeing all of these seeds that were left for me. One of my dearest friends who died a few years earlier gave me this book called Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. It's like this book from the 60s, you know, that she hand wrote practically. And she's a big author now and a spiritual teacher and everything. But I looked at it at the time and I just went weirdo. And I loved my friend, but I threw it on my desk. And after he died, I'm cleaning my desk and I found it. You know, like you never know when those seeds are going to awaken. And like you talked about going back to some of these sites, I've been going this year over and over and over to 3 primary pyramid sites that call me to go. One of them I can go in the morning and do a ceremony with fire, be pre-dawn, and it's just been so profound because it's almost like we're walking together forward through the year, through the evolution. And as I bring my key codes to that site and do whatever I'm called to do there, and meditate, talk, leave something, I don't know, and then I come home, there's an exchange. Right? You receive information. You might get a download. You might, have a healing. You may whatever, but you're also bringing. And we have that. We're doing much more of that than we realize. And every time it's that speed of of time right now, 20 times faster at every level that we go to now. It's 20 times faster.
I've heard there's 53 ancient civilizations. And if God has done this before, that's the place where creation is. If you look at the tectonic plates in space around Earth, that whole area looks like a vagina. Believe it or not, everything, the whole Earth is covered, and then the tectonic plate splits is right there where the Atlantic Ocean is.
I love it.
That's pretty wild.
To me, what I love right now is that so much of this mystery information that was hidden and coded for good reason, the crystals are waking up, different energies are waking up. We're coming to higher levels of consciousness. We're having to shed old ways of thinking. Everything is on a path of awakening that's really offering us these understandings. And now you have these, like, I think they call them alternative researchers, right? Who are like, what's underneath the pyramids in Giza? And, what is this aligned to, and what's on Mars? I don't know if you listen to Hoagland, but all these pyramids on Mars, all of these sphinxes on Mars, there's so many, not just the one. And then the alignment and how they're here, and this reflects that. And then everybody having this fight between the scholars, between the politicians, and between the religions in general, who don't want anyone to say something's older than they said it was. It's like holding on to the side of a river that's going faster and faster and faster and faster, and they're just refusing, like, no, that's only 2,000 years old and it's 10,000 years old. Or, when you have people like the Aborigines who have a history of 250,000 years old, there's people been around a lot longer. That stuff's just falling apart. It's just how long the structures, the school structures, the traditional structures are going to hold on before they're just overwhelmed with this new information, because the best part is that it's coming within us. So you can learn from some someone else, you can get triggered, you get a seed. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to watch videos of that place. I want to know more about this energy or whatever you're talking about. Then that's going to open another door and open another door. And now they're on their own path of discovery, which is what we're doing. We're all lighting up like those little pillars of light that are coming. So do whatever you're called to do right now, because it's such a gift to be in this crazy time right now, because it won't last forever. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Where were you born and raised?
Chicago. I was in Chicago till I was 9, and then I moved to Brussels and London. And,
Interesting. So you're in Chicago now. What is your connection to the Soaks? Is it how you pronounce it? Soaks tribe?
The
Sioux tribe. Sioux tribe.
Yeah.
How are you connected to the Sioux tribe?
Well, interestingly, when I was growing up there, my mom's German, my dad's Scandinavian, so I didn't have any in my blood or anything. It's not like New Mexico where you're surrounded by reservations, you're surrounded by actual natives. I don't remember there being many people. However, there was a lot of like dolls, and if you went out to the countryside, maybe like carvings, that look like totems of Indian braves and the kind of traditional stuff from the 60s and 70s. I was absolutely fascinated. I would dream about it. I wanted to be Pocahontas because it was the only representation of a Native American I knew. And if we went to one of these restaurants that had like this big Indian guy like that, my mom said I would wake up in the morning like this, and it was very, very vivid. And then later on, when I lived in New Mexico, I actually spent about 4 years studying with a Lakota Sioux shaman and doing all of that deeper work. So, which is unusual because New Mexico, that's not where they're from. So I thought that was an interesting connection, that person happened to be in a different place. And that was the primary shaman there that I worked with. So what I think is happening, because I felt maybe other people feel this, I felt a very strong attraction to Native American things. And I also felt scared of them because the little bit that I saw, it felt like, whoa, they're talking about crossing a river to death, from my culture, you don't talk about death, you don't talk about preparing for death. And so it seemed just very scary, it's just so foreign and yet so compelled towards it. I felt the same way with the Wiccan, with the Celtic, with the goddess world as well. I would pick up a book and put it back and pick up a book and put it back until I finally after my first daughter died, I went into the Reformed Congregation of the Goddess for 16 years. And it's very Native American, very similar, very beautiful, very loving, very nature honoring, cycle honoring, watching the cycles of the earth, speaking to the earth, respecting life and love. So the things that we have from history, from our cultures that told us this is bad, this is evil, don't be psychic, don't know things, don't do divination. That was, not only were we killed for, beheaded for, burned at the stake for, blamed, whatever, but also there were places that had laws that said you can't do divination, which is basically receive information directly from any source except for their authority. So it's a big time right now.
The reason I asked that question is because this is where science tells on itself. So in this quadrant of Earth, when you look at Lake Michigan, Niagara Falls, the area up there is one of the oldest areas at the beginning of creation, 4.6 billion years ago. Blue Ridge Mountains is the most developed, which would make you understand why it's one of the four corners, one of the most developed areas since the beginning of creation, 4.6 billion years ago. And then where Lake Mead is, right? Same thing, beginning of creation. And then the Montana area, megaliths that are there, another area, tied to Mount Shasta and so forth. So, in each of those places, the reason the natives lived there, because they were the most spiritual.
Yeah, exactly.
And if your dad was Scandinavian, I think the Scandinavians were basically some of the people who survived Atlantis, because if you looked at old Scandinavians, they look like Native Americans.
Yeah. A lot of people believe that Sweden is the crown chakra of the planet because they have that sense of fairness, that, higher sense of society. They don't have anybody in prison because they take any people that need to go to prison and then they consult with them and help them heal and then put them back in society. They have a very interesting, less emotional, but much higher fairness aspect to a lot of the things they do in a community oriented. So yeah, it's very interesting. Well, I'm adopted, so I have my blood is Celtic, is Scotch, Irish, and German. And then I was raised by them. And so, yeah, it's very interesting, the lineages also that are coming up right now that are calling to us. I never felt connected to lineages because I was adopted. So if my mom had pictures of ancestors, I was like, well, that's nice, but I didn't know who I was, so I never really had it. And then my daughter died that I had, and I adopted my twins. So I have this very interesting perspective on life. And yet there's a sense of lineages that go way beyond our bodies to like what you're bringing through, what you're tuning into.
It's tone, because the archetypes are tone. Tone attracts tone. So you were probably adopted by the parents because you represented the same tone as the parents that adopted you, and the people you adopted probably represent the same tone that you represent, right? So it's tone, and that is because we don't understand that. We don't understand tone. We define things by the color of people's skin when it should be defined by the tone and archetype based on the quadrant of Earth. And Sweden would be one of 4. In each of the 4 quadrants, the body is represented. Each of the 4 corners of the world represents the pineal gland of that quadrant. So there's 4 pineal glands at the creation of 4, right? And this is just, I don't know. And then I had this thing, there's 16 sphinx because there's 4 in each quadrant. And after understanding this grid system binder, I just wonder if some of the stories that are biblical wasn't maybe closer to this coast, and they claimed it over there because of propaganda.
Yeah. And the deeper that I've studied the Bible, the more I really do align with the idea that it's not a history book, that it's a very, very deep mystery teaching of psychological drama about who we are, and everything represents something. So it's extremely universal in that sense. And, when you start to go back, the Madonna, mother and child, and even the family, the Holy Family, the Trinity, well, that goes back to Isis, Horus, and Osiris in Egypt, and even further back, and probably other ways as well. It's the same archetype. It's the same energy repeating. The pantheons and a lot of the God and goddess pantheons in a lot of cultures, Sumerian and Egyptian and Greek and Roman and so on, you can compare them. And when you do that, it's shocking how it's almost always the same. It's just a different name, maybe a little bit different story, but it's the same energy. It's the same essence. It's the same element, right? It's the same guidance for us. So yeah, it's the idea of the binder that you had. Do you see it going through the planet and out the other side? Or do you see it just going from the surface or down
when I would ground it, I could see when I would ground it, I could see these wraps going around the whole Earth, like, and then it would come back to where my feet are, so it'd wrap. And then when I knew it was wrapped, I knew it was wrapped, it was done. But then I just see this stuff like, the beam shut up, and then all around the Earth, it's all lighting up as well, like with whiter, like this was like, the beam was like rainbowish color. Yeah. And then the other stuff around the beam was like white lights sparking up all around.
Oh, nice.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, because I was seeing that it was not stopping, but it wasn't going like straight through like a beam, like a, needle going through something, It was more like it was connecting in some way. Very interesting. Well, what happens is that when we have an eclipse, say, for example, whatever energies that particular eclipse is, whatever's going on at that time is an evolutionary shifting point. And so the energies download into the earth like that, activate, and then send back energy. There's always that wrapping, like you said, or I see it as an infinity weave up and down and back and forth. Yeah. Was on the equinox that you said?
Yeah, I did it on the equinox. I did it on the
September 22nd?
22nd, I think.
Yeah.
That was Monday.
Yeah. Awesome.
And nobody would have ever thought, I don't know how, I got the information it was above Florida, but nobody ever would have thought about the Okefenokee Swamp. But when you study it, it talks about all the metals underneath that area, and there's oil under there because they have the methyl, what do you call it?
Yeah.
This
Methanol.
methanol
Yeah, I think it's methanol
comes up out of the
gas.
ground and it catches fire,
Oh my gosh. Oh
like
my gosh.
fireballs, right,
That's
at
like
this
a
place.
really powerful energy. Like if you think
Yeah.
about energetically, in all levels of energy, you think about the water interacting with the gas, the methanol, with the fire, anything fire. Fire is the most important element right now because we're going into 2 years of fire. And it's the purest element because you can pollute water, you can pollute earth, you can pollute air, but you can't pollute fire. So anything like a lava or, any aspect of fire with something is always fascinating to me to do that. And then we used to do retreats in Arkansas because of the crystal beds underneath, like you were talking about and they're vortexes, they're enormous vortexes balanced with the ones in Brazil, the amethyst ones. They're the biggest deposits. And then, of course, you have them crystals and quartz all around the world. So they're vibrating with everything as well. And the energy of the swamp, you would say, oh, yeah, if it's not easily accessible, not a lot of people are studying it or going to it or talking about it or experiencing it. So I think it's and that makes it even more pure to me. The fact that other people aren't going there, or talking about it. Very interesting.
The other thing, when you talked earlier, you talked about the 360 senses. Now, you said you learned this in what school? The feminine school. What school? Tell me a little bit about that school and the senses.
Well, the first mystery school I was in was called the Melchizedek Method, and they did 5.5 levels with Alton before he moved on to another dimension out of his body. And so it was basically the left and the right eye of Horus. It was all of the Egyptian mystery schools, but it wove in what he called the feminine aspect. So whereas you have a Merkaba that you envision with the pyramids coming above and below, the masculine and feminine, and connecting around you and rotating them the different ways, the way that Drunvalo, I worked with Drunvalo first. He went that and took that into a sphere. So everything is a hologram, and in that sphere made out of the flower of life pattern, the flower of life pattern has every sacred geometrical shape within it that all life is formed from. And it's when our 8 original cells, I call them your Janisa crystal in your body, it's still at the base of your spine, at the bottom of your umbilical cord. And it holds all the codes for your body, but also for your spirit, for your plan, for what you can become, for who you are. So the idea of activating yourself, balancing your light body, understanding the channels of energy that come through you. What was the original part? Because I'm off on the mystery school now.
Because I have something I think will complement that. The 300 senses.
Oh, the senses, right? Yeah. So actually, I'm not sure if that came from there, but I've studied with so many different teachers and shamans, and I'm a master hypnotherapist and a homeopathic doctor. And if it was vibrational medicine, frequency medicine, I went deep into it. And so the idea, though, that you have 360 senses and we're aware of 5, and then we sometimes think we have a 6th one. And like and most of us know now, you've got a whole lot of them. And sometimes they're popping open at midnight. And sometimes you have to be in a deep meditation or in a sacred place because you need the energies there to help you hold the frequency or relax or let go or take mushrooms or whatever it is to access these sacred states and everything. But your 360 senses are already there. They're like your nervous system. They're already down, embodied in your light body. And when you realize your light body, I always say you're like your physical body is like the center of a Tootsie Pop, juicy center of chocolate, whatever they put there, right? And then all of these other layers are around you, like that popsicle. You've got your auric field, or your physical etheric, and your emotional and mental and spiritual and Buddhic and financial and relational. And these are all encoded. And when you look at everything as one, instead of like, this is separate from this and I have to put them together and I have to know how they work, this is letting go and surrendering back to the original oneness. And that's a sacred feminine perspective. Everybody has feminine and masculine. So it's not about women, right? And it's about balancing that and resuscitating and resurrecting our sacred feminine, trusting our intuition and allowing these senses to speak to us and not try to chase them, not try to force them. Don't use a masculine kind of way of achieving something, like we've been taught, go after it, make it happen. If you do that, you're counteracting, you're pushing away what you want, because the intuitive is all about acknowledging you already have it. You're there. Oh, I'm here. It's time travel. You don't need to be like, oh, I hope one day I'm going to be successful. You just go, wow, I love being. And then you're embodying it and talking about it until it's literally at your fingertips around you. So the sacred feminine works very differently. And that's part of what we have to realize is it's not just resting, respecting, spending more time with your spirit. All those things are good. But it's recognizing that there's a different way of communication, and you can't know what it is until you let it unfold and you step into it, and then you have an experience, right? And then you let that open new ideas, new experiences, and then that unfolds, and stay in the eternal now, because that's where everything is.
I mean, I think you taught me a lot just by listening to that, but I've always knew that the senses were mathematical, because I always have this thing about, science only uses two parts of law of attraction, the foundation and environment, to determine answers for humanity.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't include the senses, which we could understand completely, and understand that humans, their subconscious is developed to age 7. And then later in life, we start responding to things based on our unconscious bias. So 2 things. The one thing I understood going through this separation of voice, that love is our freedom, and love is the foundation of our sensibilities. And when you talked about the tree of life, and I agree with you 100% too, when I felt that feeling, I understood that we need to feel both sides, because if you think our biggest problem in the world is people don't want to feel something that's that emotional, so we've shut that off.
Yeah.
Now let's segue to Netflix's algorithm. Because we don't want to feel, we've accepted this bullshit from the science community about 2 parts of law of attraction, alienate the sensibilities. Because we don't want to feel, 75% of the programming at Netflix is dark programming, because that's what we're getting in the community, and that's what people want to see at home, and that's what their production schedule creates based on their world algorithm, Netflix.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we should feel the extreme of sadness and vice versa to know that balance. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. And here's a secret that's so powerful, because who wants to re-experience painful emotions, right? If somebody, when my daughter died, I don't want to ever experience that again. I don't want that feeling. I'm very grateful for the experience at a spiritual level. I get it all now at the time, but I don't want to experience that level of grief. However, you only experience that level of grief if you've experienced that level of love. And so you were talking about love being the foundation. The elders that I work with now, and even in the past, they say there's only one secret to the key to this era of peace that we're going towards. Your entry level is be unconditional love, period. Not accept and with and that and whatever and no. And so if that's our understanding, is that's not impossible, that's who we are. We're remembering it. We're peeling away layers. We're opening, to these newer things that seem new, but they're not. We're remembering them. And the big opportunity right now is that if you master your emotions, like a master, whatever tradition you want to call a master, we call them the masters of light. These are just people, or maybe colors. It might be the 12th ray of creation, gold, which has every other thing in it. And it's a consciousness, and it's full of every color and harmonic and math equation you need to create certain things. So to me, that's a master. That's an energy that has a mastery in something that I can talk to, that I can connect with. And that's going to have a particular way of communicating. And when we awaken more of our senses and we stop making them mean bad things. I did 4 ayahuasca journeys quite a while ago now. And I was very afraid of throwing up, but I was very afraid of having to re-experience my daughter's death. When you go do these things, it's like, oh, am I going to have to go through that again? Well, I did. However, it was, of course, one of the most profound and healing things, because what happened was lots of other things were going on, very, very deep into shamanic journeys and everything. And then I went through experiencing that pain, that grief. My whole body tensed up and arched back. I was sweating buckets. I could feel the sweat pouring down my back. it was like you couldn't breathe. You're just like, I was like seized with this grief. And then instantly I was the ocean. I was the field of bliss, and I was one drop of water in everything. And I was like someone with a little knife going like that and stabbing you just enough to be like, like it wasn't the end of the world, but it was like, hey. And then it dissipated into the ocean. And it was like, it was almost ecstatic. It was beautiful. It was like I got to experience that level, and I experienced it without a story, without it meaning bad or good. I got to just experience it, and it was like so palpable and vivid and sensual and painful but pleasurable at the same time, and completely changed my mindset and my teaching and the way I was starting to, like I said, like it was another sense being opened of being able to see, sense, and understand things that are happening for me and other people and what's happening on the planet from a new level. Like, do we carry the wound around? Do you identify yourself with a wound? I'm a this survivor, I'm a that, this terrible thing happened to me. Nobody is belittling the pain that we have all been through in some level. There's just no use to carrying it around as an identity. It doesn't bring you happy healing. It brings you more reasons to feel wounded and weak. And you can't live your path, and the universe can't support your path if you are constantly saying the wound is bad. What if the wound is your best friend? Everybody's had an experience they thought was terrible at the time and later was like, thank God that happened. That was the best thing ever. And that's pretty much what happens when people come to me and say, my whole life's falling apart. I say, congratulations. Let's look at what's opening up for you. What are you being liberated from?
You know, we stay on that side of negativity because we don't want to feel
afraid of it. It's the cave, it's the Star Wars, the cave you fear to enter, because it's the doorway. Everything is one thing. Lack and abundance are the same thing. It's like a thermostat. You're 0, are you at 100, and where are you in between? If you have nothing, you're down here. If you have too much, you're over there. Like, where is it? It's two sides of the coin. So that pain, like I always tell my students, what's on your plate? Be like, I want to learn this, but I keep having this problem. That's on your plate. That's what your soul is telling you. That's what your spirit is telling you. Here, deal with this. Here, look at this. Here, this is still here. This is the answer. This is what you're looking for. This is going to free you. It may not be the exciting thing to do, but it's the thing on your plate, So one of the deeper mystery school exercises that I take people through is inviting you, anybody's welcome to try this, to take an emotion that's very difficult. Do you get triggered? Do you go into like feeling like someone hit you in the gut? Like, I don't have these things anymore, but I used to be a big people pleaser. So I was always hoping everybody liked me and doing the best and all that. And I would get the feeling like if I didn't get the approval or something like that, I felt like I was punched in the stomach. I had a very strong solar plexus response to the emotional field. First, I learned to balance my emotional field and to take the big hook that's hanging out of my solar plexus like this to every person in the world. What do you think? And they could just energetically pull on it, and flipped it inside, and a giant sunflower grew up. This was a shamanic journey I went through, and just opened up right in front of my solar plexus, which of course is that sacred geometry tube torus energy that goes right into the center of that. And it became, this is my energy. I don't have to be hanging out there for every other person, to be grabbing onto that. And the other thing is what story is causing you to have that emotional reaction? You can't say that you're over someone who abused you, someone who left you, someone who belittled you, or loss of love. Like you said, that's, the number one thing you learn in psychology, humans, is that we all had an event as a child where we thought that someone who loved us unconditionally didn't love us anymore, and we chased that love and that approval. It could be just that you broke a glass and your mom yelled at you, and she'd never yelled before. It turned into the biggest event of your life, and then you ran through life trying to please everybody to win that love. We don't need that. That love's inside of us. It's infinite and it's always flowing, and then we can be the radiation of that. We can radiate love. We can embody love. And then we're the ones that are clearing the path all around us. and seeing and sensing things at deeper levels.
There's something just popped in my head when you think about this frequency change, and I have one more little piece to tie to the senses. We're moving on the other side of 4 because we're going from 3D to 5D. So we're moving on the other side of 4. So maybe that's why the kids are more sensitive now, ironically. I mean, I think technology has a lot to do with it as well, but maybe there's something that sensitivity going on the other side of 4 to 5.
Well, they have to be programmed that way, really. They have to come in that way now to handle these higher frequencies. It's those of us who've been, thankfully I've been on the path doing the work, but if you come in now, and my kids are 28 and even they have a completely different sensory system ability, and they care about stuff in a completely different way. They are not materialistic at all. They didn't jump on that bandwagon like I was raised, like achieve. It's not like they just sit around and do nothing, but they're very happy, doing art, creating music, having this more inner beautiful life than chasing material things and fame and fortune and stuff. And I think that the frequencies that they're able to hold, a lot of those younger generations aren't that good yet at really expressing why they're here. I think a lot of times older generations kind of go like, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Because we want them to be who we were, but they aren't. And so they're finding that, it's almost like the bamboo that's underneath for 5 years, creating a network. And then we're going to start to see they've created some kind of network to hold us as we go through this transformation, but it's definitely tuned into senses. I mean, highly sensitive people, my children, I remember buying a parenting book when they were 3 called Highly Sensitive Children. And I have 2, but one just uber extreme, like insides of the seams. And then my partner now, my husband, he had a massive seizure, Kundalini awakening 6 years ago, and went from I can't feel energy to can see and feel the energy coming out of his hand. It wakes him up at night, EMF sensitive, has had to learn a whole different way of living with it. And now he has sacred elders telling him, what are you going to do with your gifts? Instead of like, oh, we're so sorry what happened to you. You can't function half the day the way you used to. You received gifts. So your challenges, your transformations, your loss, he can't drive now. That could be the end of the world. Of course, you have to go through that, but they're all gifts. And it's about holding that and not telling the story. So experience an emotion and separate the story from it. And feel the emotion completely, just completely. Just go, oh my God, I'm going to feel grief. But you don't have a story with it. You're going to take the story and you're going to keep putting it in the box next to you. It's like, oh, no, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a feeling. And it's just like going out and there's a 24-mile-an-hour winds. I want to see what that feels like. It's the same thing. And what I learned in hypnosis was when you stop holding energy away from you, fear of whatever, okay? And you just relax, you accept it. Acceptance is a state of consciousness where you take your power back. It's where forgiveness happens in your emotional body. Harmony happens in your mind. You start to transcend states of consciousness that you were attached to that don't matter anymore. And you start to be infused with compassion. So when you do that, if you just accept it, okay, it's kind of like that big book right now, right? Let them. That's what I've been teaching, calling it the acceptance process. Is you just accept whatever it is and don't make it mean anything, because that's where your power is. So if you take the story and you put it aside and you feel it, it's amazing. It'll come like down here and then you go, no, I don't want it. And then down, then you feel it and you might have different sensations in your body. I sense it. I imagine it. I invite it to move through me like that from top to bottom. And by the time it goes through you, my mentor in hypnosis said, if you accept something, it has no more power over you. And so you go through it and you might have pains and memories and things. And I used to do this during my divorce, and things would happen. And it would really stress me out. And I would breathe through it and feel it and accept it. And this idea of separating the story from it, it is one of the most empowering things you can do, because now you're taking back your emotional body, which is your power plant. And we're meant to be using our emotional body to create, to heal ourselves, to create instant manifestations, to create the reality that we came here to create, but it's all mucked up with all these stories.
Well, this is where my alignment process comes in, aligning the 4 pillars and aligning and having science recognize your senses and bringing that back in, because the other thing I've learned is that first you got to decalcify your pineal gland. So you have full sensory. Once you decalcify that, then you can understand where your focus sensory is. And your focus sensory is your talent. Now, if we can pull this back in and start educating people on the 360 senses, and science recognizes the full law of attraction, the reason we're going through this thing is that the tree of life is only getting 2 drops of information, because we're living off a foundation that science has created, but we're operating in this out of control, unaligned emotions and making all our decisions through an emotional space.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
This frequency change is actually for us to recognize our senses, bring it back into science, bring it back into humanity. Then God can receive the 3 drops of information for the tree of life, so humanity continue to evolve. That is
and it's there already for us. Yeah. And I agree with you. And the beautiful thing is like the deeper you go into realizing that it's already there, it's already done. So I don't have to chase. I don't have to expect it to take a long time. Then we jump into an ego story of like, well, it didn't happen fast enough, so I didn't do something right, or some other story. If we keep getting out of that story, that's just one story, one perspective. That doesn't serve me. Okay, next. And then the amount of energy, the amount of power you have, not power over other people, power to be your own authority, power to access the information that you need in every moment, because when you start to realize like the 4th dimension is time, and time is a spiral and you can move up and down it. And then the 5th dimension is really, for most of what the work I do, it's the state of I call it the Akasha, but it's the state of non-judgment. It's like being at the top of a pyramid. You're at the peak and you're looking down, and there's the 4 corners of your life. There's the container of your life. And you're just looking at it from above, like you're looking at a map, and you're not connected. You're not judging it. You're not in the story. You're not blaming anybody. You're not going, oh, that sucked. This was good. You're just looking, isn't that interesting? Oh, look at that pattern. Oh, look at there. Here we go. And that state, like you said something about moving from 4 to 5, and we're jumping up to 8 and to 13 dimensions. And a lot of people are popping through to higher dimensions. And part of the issue, the challenge, is not proper training. People need proper training for their body. They're balancing their energies, understanding some of the things that's happening. And then when you enter these higher states of consciousness, how to enjoy them without, there can be an interpretation that is either negative or positive that creates a craving that you go chasing that experience again, or fear of that experience, right? And that's the emotion is in the middle of that, and that opens a door for you. So whatever the fear or wound or abuse or the current thing in the circus going on around us that's causing you stress or fear, if you unplug from it, not that you don't care about people. So if you have a particular role in something, please do that. However, adding anger, judgment, and pity to any situation adds more anger, judgment, and pity to that situation. It doesn't rise to a higher state of consciousness. So the other thing too is to realize the multidimensionality of us. So we tend to think of senses being like eyes. But if you know the Kogi Indians, they know, like the ancient Maya, they knew the minute you were born, the elder did your chart, and the whole village knew what your sign was, therefore what your purpose was. And you were encouraged and supported by everyone to become that. You were never told, go be a doctor like your dad. I want you to be proud of me. That's stupid. They knew if you didn't embody your purpose, that puzzle piece was going to be missing from the community. And the community, everyone, even the king or whatever, that was a role, that you had. And so when you know that, you have a different sense of support to be who you are. And the Kogi Indians would identify certain seers or oracles and put them in to darkness for the first 16 years of their life. And they did not use their eyes. And they come out now and they travel and they do healing and they have the most heightened intuitive senses. I would say I would love to talk to one of them and see what they say about 360 senses or what their cultural origin story says or how many, but they're definitely, that's one of the things they do. Now, I don't recommend anybody do that. However, if you do go into a silent retreat or into something where you unplug from a lot of other people's opinions, you start to awaken to a deeper level of sensitivity, and giving yourself that chance every day is more important than brushing your teeth every day now.
Information drives society. And if you were born in a desert and you only knew that desert, you're only going to know the desert.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
You might have developed senses because you're in a desert and there's no cars, there's no traffic, there's no TV. Okay. There's like no certain kinds of input, there's no 4G, like whatever, like there's certain kind of things that you would develop a sense, a sixth sense or another sense with that environment, with the energy. I live in the Yucatan, and I lived most of my life in cold places, Chicago, London, like the colder places. And then I moved to LA and San Diego and New Mexico, and I like being warm. And I moved here 10 years ago, and I had to have the air conditioning on all the time. I had to have it at about 22. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit anymore, but 20, 22, very cold. And it was difficult sometimes when I went out, of course, whatever. And now I just got back from a month in England, and it was cold and it was rainy, and here it is hot and humid. But the norm there was 7 degrees Celsius lower than my coldest. And I've been here so long, I'm used to it. I'm acclimated. And I never knew I would be. I don't use my AC at night. I wear a blanket. When I first moved here, I couldn't even put a sheet on me,
Yeah.
And so like that, we do that. We acclimate, you speak with that environment. Your body starts to find a balance with that environment. And then if you take yourself out, which most people have nowadays, hopefully, you take yourself out of where you were and you at least travel a little bit, you have a chance to now start weaving a tapestry, because there's so much more that your current or your upbringing, environment, senses, and you may not even know you have these extrasensory perceptions because it's normal for everybody who lives there.
Well, before we get off here, I don't know if you can do a quick read, see if there's anything new I need to know or anything you can see or for me before we jump off here.
Yes, definitely. Is there anything in particular you want to focus on?
This divorce is supposed to teach me something, and just want to know if I'm headed the right direction.
Well, the first thing was interesting because it was kind of a laugh. It was a little bit of a giggle, like, am I going the right direction? And it was like, always, kind of like, yes. Okay. All right. That's very interesting. So what do we have in? So in front of you first was a lizard, big lizard, not an iguana, just a lizard, but big, and in front of you, coming towards me. And around you was, it looked like the side of a cliff, a mountain, not a cold mountain, more of a maybe Sedona, type side of a hill. And then up behind you is, it's changing now. It looked like a husk, like maybe coconut or corn, like a husk that when you remove it, it was very hard. It was very protective. It was there for really intense reasons, and it had a lot of strength or resilience, and it's now been removed. And it's only there behind you, almost like a little band shell, a little, or like some of the Hindu gods that have the big snake, kind of coming up behind them, just forming a hood. But it's brown, and it does remind me a lot of my coconuts, where, you can see the fibers, you can see the layers and layers and layers that it was made with, but it's just this one piece left. still quite thick. It's coming apart at the edges, but it's mostly just behind you. And there's a sense of, okay, there's a being. Is this you? Yes. Okay. Is this angelic? Yes. Okay. This is a messenger, and that wants to connect with you through the back. So in your time-space continuum, you're standing here like in a tunnel of light to your time-space continuum. So in one sense, from the side of your body back is the past, but it's also the entry point for a lot of other levels of us, a lot of times, places, and beings. So, so is this so what it looks like is an old-fashioned kind of angel that has armor, but big wings. And it's very distinct that it's you. It's not like a guide outside of you. It is a part of you. And it is a protector part of you. It's a part of you that's been a protector over your family or your wife, maybe, or just your entire concept of what that means. The union, the marriage, the life together, the concept of being inside of that unit. And you've sort of shut that out for you. It's time for that part to come back, to not be only, well, it's okay. There's a sense of saying that it's okay for you to let go of sensing being responsible for certain things, for other things, to re-examine that. You don't have to fight it anymore. There's nothing to protect from. It's almost like that angelic, very big man, very muscly man, very, Archangel Michael, like with the big muscles, and that it's like going up. It's almost like jumping up to try to see over this shell that you have with the sword in the right hand pointed up. And yet there's this part of you, this lizard, which is really mystical, powerful energy. This is energy of earth and energy of water and energy of fire and energy of you. It's an evolutionary upgrade, really, is what they're saying for you. You're moving forward, and that this part of you stays there, but you can open up. It would be beneficial if in some meditation, when you feel ready, to focus on your back and then feel this shell and just gently project yourself out of the back of your body, feel and sense into your time-space continuum, asking to connect to this part of you, because there's several reasons. I guess there's some guilt from some kind of duty. There's a sense of duty that's not just this life. This is a multiple life sense of duty that you did represent many times, the sense of a protector for maybe a community or other people.
Is it for humanity?
Yeah, it seems like very big, and that you've embodied it several times in different ways inside of a human story. But now there's a different connection, and it's like you're not meant to communicate with that part of you or connect to that part of you in the way that you did before, because there's a transformation you're going through. They're showing it between coming up from your heart, your solar plexus, into your heart, and it almost looks like guts, looks like actual inner guts that are like untwisting, and that this is going to become a very important part of you in terms of an archetype, that what you're doing, though, is leading you through that. So to give yourself permission to unhook from the idea of duty, obligation, that is anything except for your unfolding, your path of wisdom, your new knowledge, that you don't have to do it in the old way that you did. And then there'll be a sense of, it's not safety. There'll be a sense that this shell is no longer like what's left over of this hard shell that you were living inside of, so to speak. It's going to become sort of transparent and looks more like a petal of a lotus. So it's going to become more of a power, and a generator and a light symbol. And that's the transition that you're in. The full moon that we have coming is a very good time for joy, lightness, and yeah, lightening up in terms of your duties. And because you're going to actually be more connected and flow with more information and radiate more light and have these doors that are opening for you that are connecting information are going to start to form. I'm seeing not like a grid in the traditional sense, more of a beehive type of structure, like creating that with these beautiful, it's a very good metaphor because it's showing like cups of honey, which are richness, gold, medicine, very valuable that you'll have. So this next, it's in a week, I think, the full moon, but then the rest of the year, we're going to have the eclipses next year are going to be related to the eclipses this year. And so in March, you're going to have a huge doorway that opens to some new way of seeing yourself sitting in your space, sort of like you're inside of this coconut that's now mostly broken open, except for this part. And this part's in a transition of you relating to yourself differently. There's a lot of radiation of colors coming out, like emanating almost like a heat, like yellows, pinks, they keep going out in concentric circles, very warm. And then let me see if I can put some words to that. It says be love, and be love differently. Like give yourself a chance to see your relationship with your wife or your relationship with anything, anyone, even yourself in this part of your life that's transitioning. You know, the way it was is ending, who you thought you were is ending, and whatever way that means that you're together, not together, and or how it happens, it's just that honoring of a cycle, of a transition, of the leaves falling, so to speak, and going into the fall, so that you can then see who you are, where you are. So it's another sense of that. But I wouldn't try to get past or to get rid of this shell you have here, because there's a part of it that's still very thick, very protective. And even though it's more like it's dead, it's not living, you know, it's like a husk that's brown, and it's still got that living wisdom in it, like a tree does. So it's full of the way that a seed is, you know, that a seed falls and around it, the fruit is the food to feed that seed. This is kind of food for you that's got some wonderful things for you to harness.
So is there anything I should do specifically?
Well, it would talk to the part of you that has felt like a rescuer, that has felt like a protector, that has felt over obligated or underappreciated in what you do. And then make declarations that you're ready to change, like who you are, how you see yourself in your identities, in your roles. Let your masks transmute into something that could be different. That's really the being in it and not re-embodying who you were, recognizing that part of you is definitely there, like, hey, let's talk. But you might be like, I keep thinking about like a dog or something, you know, that goes to the bathroom on the floor. So you put them outside, you clean it up, you know, and then you're like, okay, you can't come back in until you know not to pee on the floor, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not that who that part of you's been bad, it played the role, but you don't need to play that role in that way anymore. And that's a big deconstruction right now. And it's not that you have to do anything, but you will benefit greatly from giving it time and listening.
Interesting. Well, I'll show you something real quick. Thank you so much for that. I'll show you something real quick.
Can you come closer?
Let me see.
It just looks like, oh, okay, now I see there's a person and you're in front of a tree. Oh, yeah, I can see most of it. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
The serpent in front of me. I drew that when I was in kindergarten. Wow.
Very. Yes, that is super interesting. Definitely. And we are having this Kundalini awakening now on the whole planet, not just with the serpent energy of the year, but recognizing what that means. That's really, again, reclaiming our emotional power, our ability to balance and own our own life force so we can create. And I like the Maya, they say that it's in your blood. It's like lightning in your blood that lights up as you start to recognize who you are. And then that opens up new connections in your blood.
I got this project. I want you to come on and talk about senses, because I think you got to have a good angle on that. They call you the fairy godmother for a reason. There's a Tamara Oviatt is in the Yucatan too.
Yes, I met her recently. She's about an hour down the coast from me.
Okay, awesome. Because I mentioned you to her as well, because I thought y'all were in the same place. But
yeah, very close.
So if we want to find you and look you up, and you want to hire Nan for what she does, where do we find you?
So Nan Akasha, NANA.com is the best place to go. And then you can find my YouTube show, and you can find my shop where we have a lot of free goodies. And we just did a series with a lot of really interesting people looking at the rise of the sacred feminine energies and how do we integrate that.
Awesome. And you say Nan or not Nan? How do you say it?
Yeah.
Nan. All right.
Yeah. It's short for Nancy. Right? Yeah, it's short for Nancy. So it's NAN. Yeah.
All right. This is the fairy godmother, Nan Akasha, and I'm John Edmonds Kozma, CEO of Bang Productions, owner of the TikTok Live Creator Network Agency, and host of the Unimpressed Podcast. Until next time, thank you.